Is it a school in a garden or a garden in a school?
For the pecan pie.
Oceana High School is growing an environmental curriculum. Welcome to Pacifica Currents. I'm Edie Hovermale, your host. Tonight we'll be discussing the garden at Oceana High School. Our guest is Naftali Moed, founder and student coordinator. Welcome, Naftali.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's nice to see you. I know you from Ocean Shore School. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've grown up in Pacifica almost all my life. I've lived in East Sharp Park, and grown up in the city, been involved in all sorts of events, went through Ocean Shore for a number of years and was always involved in the gardens. And one of the things that's so great about Pacifica is we have all these great natural resources around us. We have Morey Point, we have Milagro Ridge. And so all my life I've been exploring the beaches and the hills and all the other things around Pacifica. And that's one of the things I love so much about living here, is just that access to the outdoor space. And going into Oceana, I really realized that that was something I wanted to make a part of my life and incorporate more deeply into not only what I learned in school, but also the work that I did, whether it was community service or just work in general.
Now, did they have a program at Oceana High when you started?
They didn't, and that was one of the biggest disappointments in my transition from Ocean Shore to Oceana, was that I lost the opportunity to work in a school garden that I had been very involved with in Ocean Shore, especially during my 8th grade year. And so going into Oceana, especially as I began to move up, that was something that I began to notice the absence of more, and something that ultimately inspired me to work to create the garden at Oceana.
Oftentimes when kids go into high school, they just follow the program and they don't think of new things. So how did you come up with this idea?
And I think one of the great things about Oceana is that it really fosters an opportunity within all of its students to think of new ideas. And so actually the way I found out about my interest and passion for gardening and growing food and garden-related work was through Oceana. They have a program there where instead of traditional electives, for 1 week out of the year, students choose to do a specific thing. And so my freshman year, I actually went to Pie Ranch, which is a nonprofit farm just south of Pescadero, and had the opportunity to spend a week working on the farm. And although I had worked a bit in the Ocean Shore Garden and at gardens and a few other places, living at Pie Ranch was a really influential experience on the way I viewed the world and the way I thought about things. I became aware of a lot of farm and food related issues, about this whole struggle for what's called food justice, which is the movement to try to bring about some more equity in the food system, so increased rights for the people who work to grow our food and better environmental practice, and a number of other things are working to create a more ultimately sustainable and equitable food system. And so as a freshman, I chose to go on the Pie Ranch interim, and for a week we lived a farm life. We would wake up at 5 in the morning and go and move the chickens out, and then we get to clean the chicken coop, which was something I had no experience in. It was definitely a really eye-opening experience. And by the end of the week, I really found that I had loved everything, whether it was milking goats or spending time with the cows or doing all the different types of farm work. And when I got back to Oceana after the end of the week, I realized, I wish there was some way that I could try to bring some of the joy and all the experiences that I had at Pie Ranch back to Oceana and share them with other students and continue to enjoy them myself and continue to learn about farming. And so working with Pie Ranch and the Oceana teacher, Lori Hughes, who had connected me with the interim, I went back as a volunteer over the summer and ultimately got to attend a farm conference in Portland, Maine. and got to go across the country to learn about. And so it's all sort of snowballed into this phase where I was learning all this information and really wanted a way to try to share it with people and give other my friends and other students at Oceana some of the opportunities that I had had. And so going off of that, we began to look, myself and Oceana teacher Lori Hughes, who had taken me to Pie Ranch, at some way to incorporate it. And one night on a ride back from a trip to Pie Ranch, she and I were talking in the car, and we said, you know what, we should start a garden. That would be a good way to bring the best of the Pie Ranch world to Oceana in a way that it was accessible to both the students and faculty and staff at Oceana, and also the greater Pacifica community. So that was sort of the genesis of the idea for the garden. And working from that, I began to work to try to figure out, well, how could we make this garden work, and what is the first step that we need to do? And so I started to work with Oceana's principal, whose name is Carol Pemberton, who was immediately receptive to the idea and was very warm and welcomed me into her office, and we sat and talked for an hour. And that's one of the things she always really emphasizes in everything, is to let students take leadership roles and work to improve the school.
We are using the garden across the curriculum in science classes, in math classes. We now have a cooking class that actually was spawned by the garden. Students are learning about sustainable agriculture, and to be able to have the actual experience of planting a seed, seeing it grow, cultivating it, harvesting it, cooking it, and eating it. Hi, I'm Carol Pemberton, the principal of Oceana High School. In the fall of 2009, when Naftali was a sophomore in high school, he came into my office one day with this idea and said, asked if he could have a few minutes of my time to talk about this project he was interested in. And as I would with any student who had a project, I said, well, of course. And he sat down and he laid out this plan for an organic vegetable garden. What I didn't know at the time was that he had already raised $4,000 for the project. And what he really wanted was to talk about the budget and where the garden would go, and he was really ready to get going. We began immediately to develop the plans for the garden, who was going to be the faculty advisor, where the garden was going to be. As it became clear to me that he was serious and he really had the capacity to implement this project, I realized that we needed to do some very specific steps, like we needed to get the district director of maintenance and operations on board. I contacted John Schultz. He came down. We began to look around the school campus to see what might be some possible areas, and John was the one who suggested this area. By the next spring, the fencing was up. Groups of students had begun to turn the soil and start to plant beds. Naftali and Lori Hughes got soil donated, compost donated. By the spring of 2010, we had garden beds planted for the first time. So we've created an outdoor classroom space that enables teachers to bring whole classes of students out here to enjoy the garden. It's been an amazing project that has had hundreds of people devoting literally thousands of hours of time over the last 2 years. Our concern now is, are we going to be able to keep it alive? Naftali is graduating this year. He's going to move on. We are cultivating another group of students. Lori Hughes has a garden advisory, which is an active group of students. Each spring she also takes a group of students to Pie Ranch. But the real question is, how do we keep something like this going? It takes time, it takes lots of hard work, and it takes money. We've been overwhelmed by the support that we've gotten from the community, both in terms of time, effort, and dollars. We look forward to that continued level of support and more as we move forward in the years to come. This project represents a very unique partnership between the National Park Service, Oceana High School, the Jefferson Union High School District, and the community. For the past 15 years, our students have been working, doing community service with the National Park Service to propagate native species here in the nursery, take those native species and go up to Milagro Ridge and out to Maury Point, removing invasive species and replanting with native plants. The kind of partnership that really makes a school a vital place.
So once you talked to Principal Pemberton, what did you do to make it happen? How did it come about?
So during the whole process of working with Ms. Pemberton to try to figure out whether or not the project was even feasible, I had been writing grants to a number of different funders. One of them was the National Garden Association. Another was the Orem Fund for the Environment and Urban Life, which is a local environmental foundation. And then lastly was the County Health Department, which had a large initiative that they were trying to do to decrease childhood obesity and work to improve the health in the county's youth, especially working with schools. And so after receiving those grants and approval from Ms. Pemberton, we began to look at, well, physically, how are we going to go about building this garden? And I had some experience at Pie Ranch, and between myself and Lori Hughes, who had grown up in Minnesota and had some experience doing gardening and farming there, and then Ryan Reedy, who's an environmental science and biology teacher at Oceana and has been a gardener for over 25 years, we began to look at what would be the best way to do this. And originally we were looking at one of the lawns that's in the back of Oceana, and we were actually all ready to break ground. And about 2 weeks before we were going to go ahead and start building the garden, we heard from John Schultz, who's the school district's director of maintenance operation health, and he'll explain his title. It's something crazy. He said that it would actually be great if we were able to use the gravel lot that was right behind the cafeteria. And although we weren't at first necessarily super excited about the idea, the more we thought about it, the more we realized, wow, this is a really amazing opportunity, not only to create something new, but also to recycle something old. So the lot had been completely vacant ever since the school put portable buildings there. And because of the portable buildings, there had been some sort of cementing agent sprayed at one point, which made the ground both very hard so that rodents initially couldn't burrow up and live under the buildings, and also obviously complicated what we were trying to do. And working hand in hand with the district, which although they had no money, was extremely supportive and giving us both some staff time and recycling a fence that they had down at Terra Nova and bringing it up and installing it for us. We were able to start to work to improve that site. And so the biggest thing that stood in our way immediately was the fact that the entire site was gravel. And there's no way, if you've ever gardened, you know there's no way to grow things in gravel. And it was so bad that we couldn't even theoretically work to improve the gravel by amending it with compost. So we actually had to remove a lot of the gravel, which was really the first major step, was taking the gravel and wheelbarrow loads or tractor loads or whatever we could do and taking it out of the site, excavating it at one point with an excavator. And we were able to do that through an entire volunteer effort with some help from school district staff. But that was definitely what spurred the creation of the garden. It was sort of the first steps to make the garden happen.
How many students did you have involved in that first phase?
And one of the biggest bummers with the project was always it was sort of a, if you build it, they will come. And so initially it was often myself and maybe 5 or 6 other students at most, and 1 or 2 teachers out working after school, working on weekends, and working to excavate the site. We did have a number of groups that came out. The environmental science class from the very beginning helped us to excavate some of the gravel, as well as a number of other groups. One of the school's interims, which was focused on doing community service, spent a day working at the garden, and volunteers who normally volunteer with the Parks Conservancy, which has been one of our partners in the project, came out a few days and helped us to excavate gravel and start to move things around.
At first I was very skeptical about what he wanted to do based on past experiences at other sites. Hello, my name is John Schultz. I'm the Director of Operations, Maintenance, Facilities, Health and Safety, Transportation, and the Emergency Coordinator for the high school district. Having talked with Naftali in some length and understanding what his wishes were and expectations, I took the chance and accepted his proposal. I asked him to come up with written plans on what his expectations were. We had an area that was about 5 years ago used as a location for portables for the school district. The area was left abandoned. This is probably the best place for the location of the garden. It was right off the cafeteria where students can see the plants grow once it was finally established. I provided some of the staff and the heavy equipment to prepare the soil and remove tons of gravel so we can get down to the base soil. The fence that is around there, the district also provided for the garden. It was a reclaimed fence that we used at another project we had in storage, and we just put it up for him. So it's kind of a win-win situation at no cost really to the district and or to Naftali's project. Since at one time that was a lawn area, there was infrastructure for an irrigation system which was abandoned many years ago. We revitalized that system and turned that over to Naftali, and he made a drip system to the individual planting circles. The shed that's behind us, he designed, and one of the parents built that for him. He has a network of students and parents that will come in at a drop of the hat and take on any of these projects. At first, I thought he was joking with chickens. He had chickens donated from local farmers and also Pie Ranch. Having grown up on a farm in Indiana, I've had some experience with chickens and other farm animals. And studying Naftali's design of the chicken coop and what his expectations were, he left out a few items. One of them was providing a secure base underneath the chicken coop. And I asked him to put a fence around and make the chicken coop much larger so the chickens would have an opportunity to go outside the little house and stretch their legs. The whole idea of having these chickens give the students the opportunity to see a little taste of farm life. A lot of them never seen a farm animal before. This whole idea of chicken, even though I had reservations in the beginning, turned out to be a win-win situation for the school. One idea came up by Jonas Barber, vice principal here at Oceana, to have a teaching mechanism in the garden. So the idea came up with a pergola. They designed the structure and they built it with help from parents. I had my carpenters come over, give them assistance in putting the footings in to ensure that the structure was sound and safe for all the students. Naftali's dreams are finally coming true. Even though I had reservations in the beginning, my reservations are completely gone. The only concern I have is the future of the garden. It was one young man that had a dream, and he shared that dream with faculty and community. He is a senior this year, and I have seen him gather all these students together and create a positive environment. I honestly feel that his dream is going to continue. And the district will continue to support those students and faculty that want to continue on with this garden project.
So now we can fast forward past all that hard work and we can find out where we are today. Where are we today?
So today the garden occupies what's about an 8,400 square foot plot of land directly behind Oceana's cafeteria. So if you ever go to the school and you're in the cafeteria, there's a whole wall of windows, and everything outside the windows you'll see is all the garden. And we have a number of beds that we use for active gardening, so we grow a number of edible plants. And we've grown chard, kale, all sorts of different types of squash, potatoes, onions, and a number of herbs. And all of those are used for the school's cooking class, which was actually created as a part of the garden. We also have an outdoor classroom, which was built both by myself and Oceana's principal, Jonas Barber, vice principal Jonas Barber, who came up with the idea and was extremely instrumental in figuring out how to build it and how to go about using it. And we've been able to use that for a number of different classes. The environmental science classes met out there. We've used it for a number of community meeting type gatherings. We've had a fundraiser out there where people came and listened to people talk. The Parks Conservancy uses it for their program. So the pergola and outdoor classroom has been definitely a huge part of the space. We also have 15 chickens now, which are definitely the garden's biggest attraction.
15?
We have 15, and we had 10, and one day we were down at Pie Ranch. And the nice thing about the project is everything's come together very organically. We started definitely with this very concrete vision, and the nice thing is that because it's such a small school and there's a lot of flexibility with all of us who were working on the project were able to go down to Pie Ranch one day on a field trip, and they said, oh, we're getting rid of 70 chickens, and they're all going to either find homes or become soup. And we said, oh, well, we'll take some chickens. And we came back on the bus with 5 chickens, and we got on the bus, and the bus driver looked at us and said, why do you have chickens on the bus? And she says, out of 25 plus years as a school bus driver, she's never had anybody bring 5 chickens onto a bus. But we came back, and for an hour we had 5 kids sitting with chickens in their laps, petting them and telling them not to make a mess in the bus and all of those sorts of things. And so we have the 15 chickens now, up from 10, and they're definitely a huge attraction. We move them every day around different areas, so they're completely, or almost completely grass-fed, which is great for the chickens. It also makes their eggs a bit healthier with a bit less cholesterol, and it also saves the district staff a little bit of time. The chickens actually act as a lawnmower, and they mow the lawns in the areas behind the garden, so on the side of the hill, so where they used to have to come in with weed whackers every few months and cut the grass down. The chickens have been able to take over that job, and they're happy because they get to eat the grass, and the district staff don't have to spend the time doing that. We also just worked on finishing building a shed, which was great for one Oceana student who was really interested in architecture and got to get a lot of hands-on experience in terms of the shed construction and also looking at different aspects of building. And it was great for a number of other people who had no building experience and came out and were putting up 10-foot tall walls. So we have a brand new shed that we've filled with all sorts of great tools that we can use to make the work we do back there easier.
Students here get a wonderful education, and part of that education is being involved in the garden and the cooking program. 4 years ago, I started taking 20 students to Pie Ranch, which is an organic farm outside of Pescadero, for our interim, which is a 5-day stay. Hello, my name is Lori Hughes. I teach the cooking class and advise the garden project at Oceana High School. So in the fall of 2009, Naftali approached me about starting a garden at the school. He had already started to write grants. I jumped on board as a teacher to help him with making this become a reality. One of the concerns from the district was, how are we going to keep this garden going after Naftali graduates? And so my idea was, if we start a cooking program at the school, then that's a way to support the garden, that the students are not only learning how to grow vegetables, but actually to be able to use those vegetables to cook healthy meals for themselves and their families. We have a garden advisory of 21 students who work 4 times a week in the garden, who have learned all kinds of things, from taking care of chickens to weeding, harvesting, composting, which is a huge thing, and they really understand it on so many levels. And then, of course, the cooking class is a wonderful way to really learn about healthy living by being able to go to the garden, pick the produce, and bring it right back into this room and cook a meal. The kids are learning so many things and are so engaged that it is clearly a very important part of their education. The garden project is much more than an Oceana High School project. We are reaching out to the community on many levels. Our relationship with Pie Ranch continues to grow. This summer we're hoping to send 5 students who will work at Pie Ranch and at Oceana High School. We are always interested in having community members volunteer so that we can share our experience with the wider community. Parents and students, if you're looking for a high school, we hope that you will check out Oceana. It's a wonderful school. Go to our school website to find out more information about the school, and there is a link to the garden website. You will learn about ecology and healthy living.
So the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy is currently celebrating its 15th year of partnership with Oceana High School. And 15 years ago, the Conservancy, which is the nonprofit partner of the Golden Gate National Parks, and the National Park Service, came to Oceana and began to use what were vacant greenhouses to grow and propagate native plants, and begin to work with Oceana students and classes for the habitat restoration that they were doing on Malagra Ridge. And since then, we've really developed a great partnership as a school and as the Conservancy. For years, the environmental science class has been involved in work at different park sites throughout the Bay Area. We've shared tools. We currently share greenhouse space with the Conservancy. And it's a great partnership, and it's actually the only partnership of its kind in the country between a national parks nursery and a community or school garden, where we're actually teaching both the principles of broad ecology and habitat restoration, as well as the principles of agriculture, which are normally two fairly opposing viewpoints. You normally have the people who are planting the non-native plants and are degrading the environment, and the people who are trying to restore it. And that's been one of the greatest and most interesting things for me about working on the project, as we're really doing groundbreaking work to try to intertwine two normally different areas. And we've been able to successfully work to both teach the principles of habitat restoration and also teach people about chickens, and we've been able to intermingle in a lot of really unusual ways. Some of the chickens actually act as pest control for some of the Conservancy's plants. So the Conservancy last year grew 14,000 plants at Oceana, and one of the things that they had was a pest problem at one point, and we said, hey, well, the chickens are great. They love to eat all sorts of caterpillars and bugs. So we put the chickens up on the nursery tables, and they walked around and they ate all of the caterpillars. Sometimes we had to prompt them and hand them to them. But it definitely saved us a lot of so-called humane pesticides and a lot of staff time from the Conservancy, and it gave the chickens a food source, which is great. It's high in protein, and they love eating caterpillars. There's definitely been a lot of really interesting ways that the partnership has been able to connect, and moving forward, we're definitely looking to expanding the partnership.
The plants that have been grown at Oceana High School have been brought out to Maury Point to be planted. This year we've grown 13,000 plants with volunteer and high school students. Over the past couple years, we've grown up to 60,000 plants.
Hi, I'm Megan Steinharder, and I'm the Oceana Native Plant Nursery Manager.
Hello, my name is Price Sheppy, and I run volunteer programs out in the national parks and at Oceana High School. And we're part of the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy.
Today we're planting a variety of really wonderful native plants that thrive here at Maury Point. A lot of coastal scrub species like coyote bush, as well as some really great flowers like California aster.
The native plants that we are planting here today benefit the San Francisco garter snake, which is an endangered snake, and the California red-legged frog, which is a threatened frog species. Over the past 15 years at Oceana High School, the programs have really evolved and developed. What started out as a small program has grown really big and diversified. We work with the environmental science classroom at Oceana High School, where we go into the classroom, teach a lot of ecological and environmental principles, and then the students can come out to the nursery and see how those principles work in the real world. They also can take field trips out to Maury Point and Milagro Ridge and see those ecological systems happening, and also they get to work to improve and enhance those habitats. We have about 20 students coming out every Wednesday. On the weekends we have programs as well.
We have drop-in students come in and they work with us at a variety of sites, including the nursery, Maury Point, and Milagro Ridge. So it's a really great opportunity for students to get those community service hours that they need to earn to graduate.
We have lots of community groups that come out and participate in the community garden as well as the native plant nursery. Megan, if people are interested in coming out and volunteering, how would they do that?
Well, it's actually really easy. They just have to check out our website and see what days we're out here. We tend to be at Maury Point every second Saturday of the month from 10 to 1, but sometimes we come out here more often and there's a lot of opportunities for groups. I mean, it's just an amazing transformation and we're so happy to be a part of it.
It's not just about native plants, it's about community and it's about sustainability. And there's many different ways that that is happening at the garden.
So what's going to happen? You're a senior, you're graduating. What's going to happen to the garden? What's going to happen to you?
Well, the garden's definitely going to obviously continue to move forward into all sorts of different things. One of the possibilities we've looked into and actually planned ahead for is the possibility of having a goat in the garden. The chicken coop that we built and I designed was designed so that it could theoretically hold a goat in it. And so we're looking at all sorts of interesting programmatic possibilities in the future, and I'm confident that moving forward, between the ingenuity of all the new Oceana students who are involved in the garden through the garden advisory, through the cooking class, through environmental science, and through community service are going to step up, and some of them already are stepping up to take leadership roles. We have someone who, as their Girl Scout project, is looking at potentially building a cob oven in the garden, where we could actually use the garden as a baking space for the cooking class and for other groups, and bake pizza and all sorts of other cool things out there. So moving forward, the garden's definitely going to continue to do all sorts of amazing and interesting new things, whether it's with new animals, growing more, potentially even expanding onto different parts of Oceana's campus and growing fruit and a suburban orchard, or whatever you want to, and basically the sky's the limit in terms of what we're looking forward to at the garden. And the district has expressed great interest in enabling us to continue looking forward after having seen how successful the project's been. They're definitely extremely supportive of certainly being open to almost any possibility we can throw at them. Every few weeks I email John Schultz some sort of crazy question about a cob oven or this or that, and he's been extremely receptive. So I have no doubt that moving forward with new student leadership and continued commitment from the Oceana teachers and administrators who are already involved, the garden will definitely continue to expand and improve itself.
And what about you? Where are you going?
I'm not quite sure where I'm going yet. Definitely still trying to figure out college for next year, but looking a lot at UC Davis, which has a lot of different environmental and agricultural things. And then also hoping to continue, actually ever since about the same time I started the garden, I began working as an intern with the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy, doing both nursery work at Oceana and then also working on the habitat restoration that they've done out at Morey Point. And so I definitely hope to continue that, working with the National Park Service and doing all sorts of other things. Definitely looking forward to continuing my work in environmental and work related to environmental issues, and then also continue to grow food and work in gardens and farms wherever I am.
So I'm sure you'll come back and visit Oceana High School?
I most certainly plan to come back and visit Oceana. I live just a few blocks away from Oceana, so I'm hoping to always be involved in the project at some level, no matter where I'm living or what I'm doing. Definitely stay connected to everybody who's working at the garden. This summer I'm definitely going to be involved. We're actually working with Pie Ranch. We're going to be able to hire 5 Oceana students to work at the garden and help maintain it over the summer, so I'll definitely be involved in their work. And while I'm going away, I hope that a number of other people, viewers and everyone else, will continue from the greater Pacifica community to come to the garden and volunteer. That's how we exist. It's a completely volunteer effort. None of the teachers or students have been paid thus far to work on the garden. And with a few minor exceptions, everything that's been put into the garden has been a volunteer effort. And so looking forward, I definitely hope to see more people coming. We have regular Saturday volunteer days, which are posted on our website, which is oceanagarden.org, and a number of other volunteer days. We'll be doing something for Earth Day in a couple of months. So definitely hope to continue my involvement through special events, and then hope to see more people coming and working in the garden in the future.
Thank you, Naftali, for coming in and telling us about Oceana High School Garden. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. You can always find us on YouTube.